Now I want to give you my strategy, my tips, my 3 tips in making right decisions. I start without any presumption that you are listening to someone who makes and implements perfectly right decisions all the time. Even if I myself don't like someone who is so perfect. I heard these unforgettable words, and in Spanish it says, La doña perfecta es insoportable. So translated in English, the perfect woman is unbearable. 25 years after hearing that sentence, I still remember it. So the impact was great. And it reminds me not to appear perfect because I'm not. But if I could help inspire others by not being perfect, why not? So now let's tackle the question of the day. How do you make the right decision? I Google search a dilemma that we could use today, and I found this 2-option dilemma within a story about a man walking in the desert and really almost dying of thirst, literally dying of thirst. So a word of caution here, I am using the story to come up with a decision tree and to draw decision lessons from it. So as it is, right now, the narrative has helped millions to improve the way they deal with their choices. And I congratulate the source for all the help that he has given to humanity. He's called a lifestyle coach. So what I'm going to do is to extend the narrative to a decision case study. So the story is about a man who got lost in the desert, and for several days, walking without water, he did not lose hope. He kept on walking, and suddenly he found a small hut. It unfortunately did not have water source, but the man found a bottle filled with water with the instructions. You have to use this water to start the pump, and don't forget to fill the bottle when you're done. So the dilemma is here. If he follows the instructions and the pump does not work, he throws away all the water that he has, and he might die after pumping the water to no avail. According to the story, the man takes a leap of faith, uses the water to pump so much water for his needs, and he was able to refill the container, and he was able to add in his own handwriting to the original message. He wrote, "Believe me, it works." So the moral lesson is if you take a risk and the instruction works, then you save your life and you get to tell the people that it works. If it does not work, then you can share the experience to still help others make the right choice, whatever that is. Okay, so now let's tackle the dilemma mentioned in the story using a decision tree. If you are in the situation of the man in the desert, you will not really have the time and energy to do a decision tree. So I highly recommend that you get into the habit once you are now familiar with decision trees. While you are not in those life and death situations like the man in the desert, you will have more time and serenity. So it's like an exercise drill that you will find useful when you are going to make real, hard, and tough decisions later. So it's like practicing with a fire extinguisher, determining how to use it, knowing the parts, so that in real situation of fire, you would know what to do really quick. No? So I remember it's really how business schools that teach using the case method accomplish the maximum results in their students who really improve in making right decisions. As a student myself in one of the business schools that learned from Harvard using the case method, I fell once into that desperate attempt to prepare for a case discussion, doing it very fast and rationalizing by saying, in real life, I would not have the luxury of time to do any decision tree. So I will do this fast in 5 minutes. I have other things to do. But of course, I came back to my senses when I told myself, you are right, Avik. In the real world, you won't have the luxury of 2 hours for a case to be decided, but be realistic. You do have the right time right now while studying to take advantage really of this sufficient time that you have for you to really have an in-depth analysis and to really train your mind to make a logical decision. So this time I will demonstrate the creation of a decision tree in this dilemma narrative I found in the internet. So let's just try to change screen. So basically in your screen right now, you are seeing that there is a square in the left. And then in a decision tree, the decision starts from the left and moves to the right where you will see the decision outcomes. So here at the left side, I start with a square, and the square applies to a decision node, meaning a decision has to be made. There are no probabilities. Either you do it or you don't do it. No? So I draw two lines coming out of that square. And the first line is slanted towards the northeast. So it is the line to the right slanted upwards. And the decision option here is according to the narrative. Use the water to start the pump. Refill the water when done. And don't forget to fill the bottle when you're done. Okay? So next, from the same square, which is the decision node, I draw a line towards the southeast or to the right slanted downwards. This is like, I'm facilitating it for the ones who are going to hear it from my podcast. I'm just like trying to be graphic with it in my description. So, so here is the other possibility, which is to ignore, as it says here, ignore the instruction and just drink the water. So I think it's better to focus on the second option because it is simpler. There is no probability issuing from that decision. So let's draw an arrow to the far right, which is really just near the margin already. This is the location of the decision outcomes. So what will really happen is the decision maker will satisfy his thirst from 100% of the content of the container and won't be able to refill it because there is no other available for the pump to work. So now let's go to the other decision option. From the top, the one in the first option, use this water to start the pump. What probability will I attach to the fact that the pump will work with the water in the bottle? So perhaps you will ask me, wait, Abik, does the story say that there is a probability? My answer is no, but I'm using a bounded rationality concept, which comes from Herbert Simon, the author of Administrative Behavior, the study of decision-making process in administrative organizations. So it's a classic management book. And bounded rationality is the opposite of perfect rationality. So I don't really have complete information that the water pump works, but by the looks of it, it seems to work because perhaps the container or the bottled water seems newly refilled, etc. I could really just come up with some possibilities using my observation. So really, I can have my guess. But I cannot be 100% sure. I could make a leap of faith, like in the story, and I can voluntarily assign 100% to the possibility that the pump will work and it will give me more water. But the reality is that even if the message comes from my best friend, but she has not pumped anything all her life, then I won't assign 100% outcome. But at the moment, if I were the man in the narrative, I am not in my best friend's house. I just found this hut in the middle of the desert. I think I could put some probability. So from the decision option of using the water in the container to start the pump, I will draw a circle or a chance node where we will show some possibilities of the outcome occurring. So I will put 50-50 probabilities. So hence from the circle, you see it comes out a fine line slanted to the northeast. I assign a 50% chance that there's going to be water from the pump. And then to the line slanted downwards, southeast, I will assign a 50% possibility that no water will come out. No? So really depending on whether the water pump will work, there is a 50% chance that I can refill the container and 50% chance that I will not be able to refill it. Okay? So basically, if the water, again, here you will see if the water comes out, then I would satisfy my thirst just 50% of the time. And I could refill the water because of that 50-50 possibility that I placed in this decision chance node. So let me see. What would be my decision considering this decision tree? Can you make a guess? Okay, so first of all, if I care for myself alone and I do not care for the next stranger to come, I will choose the second option. I will ignore the instruction and I will just drink the water. But then, if I care for the short-term results only and I won't think of how much travel lies ahead, how much more water I need, I will also ignore the message. So here you will see that if you don't care for the others, or you are thinking short term of your own results, you are not caring for yourself also. You are not thinking of getting the provisions for the next travel ahead, for your subsequent walk in the desert. And because you're not going to work on the pump, you're just going to ignore the instruction and really consume all the water in the container. So, however, if I follow the first option, which is use the water to start the pump, and I will only have the 50% probability of satisfying my thirst and 50% possibility of leaving water for the next stranger to come along. So it would seem that it's also not a right decision. So the tip number one to make the right decision is get yourself out of the two-option decisional situation as soon as possible. You have to be more creative. At the same time, because life is really not presenting two options alone, and always, it's not always an either-or situation. For example, you can be pushed to deciding to enroll in an online business course. You'll pay $997 when the message from the person is either pursue your passion or get stuck in your 9 to 5 work. But the reality could be that you cannot afford to resign from your job and you don't have financial resources to last you for 3 months. So you could start using your weekends to pursue your passion and keep using your weekdays in your 9 to 5 job. So it's really not an either or situation. It could be a combination. I pursue my passion on the weekends. Okay. So some writers would call this option, these two option cases, as a false dilemma fallacy, when there are actually more options available if you only take the time and the creativity to search for more options. Some coaches would say life is not black or white. Some writers would say that life is many shades of color. So tip number one is really avoid extreme decision options. If we go back to our decision tree, if I am not ready to make a decision yet because I think there's got to be more options, then I read a case again. I read the story to confirm if the instruction included the fact that I have to use the entire water to start the pump. There, in that case, I did not read that it says, actually, I have a quotation here. You will see it here. Use the water to start the pump. It didn't say use all of the water. Okay, so perhaps you might say I'm becoming like a philosopher, but the thing is, I am desperate for the right decision. So what I'm going to do is I'm finding an opening for another option. And in the decision tree, what I will do right now is I will draw another line for my third option, the middle ground option. Okay. Okay, so it just says, drink a little water, use most of the water to start the pump. The result is the tentative. It's not really the end result, no? The result from that action is I am hydrated. And you might ask, I have this question here, is that enough that you sip a little bit of the water to be hydrated? For me, the thing is when I am very thirsty and that there's not much water, then every little sip is like heaven already. So in that sense, I am satisfied. Yeah. So from this decision, I will draw a line and a circle, which is like a possibility. Okay. And the probabilities are the same like in the other two options. The first option, I mean, 50-50 possibility. Okay. Either the pump works or it does not work. Either water comes out or no water will come out. But the outcomes will be concentrated on whether I could refill the bottle for the next stranger to come along. Okay. So basically, I will not attach any possibility on whether I will be satisfied or not because I already drank a little bit of the water. I remember a story just to break the seriousness of what we're saying here. I come from Malolos, which was not yet a city then, very rustic place. And in our house, we have a water pump. And that is what we use to carry the water to the second floor. We need it to take a bath, everything. The ground floor has the kitchen, but we still need to pump the water. And in the Tagalog dialect, or even in the Filipino dialect of the Filipino language of the country, the water pump is called bomba ng tubig, right? So I got used to that. Of course, after I'm in my 20s, right? I'm still doing that, using the bomba ng tubig. Yeah. I put in the caption, water pump, okay? Bomba ng tubig in Tagalog. So about 2 decades from leaving my hometown, I was in the city. I started living in the city, and one big excursion in an island where there's really just one little hut and just a water pump. So after the swimming, after the excursion, and I really had the initiative to, okay, I'll pump the water so that we'll have water to wash or to cook, or to, because we cannot get that from the beach water, right? So I had the initiative, I'll pump the water. But I actually said that in Tagalog. I said, magbobomba na ako, which actually really surprised, and probably it might have surprised you. For those of you who know Filipino, it's quite different. It has a different meaning. So all of the people in the excursion, they said, "Stop it, Abik." So I said, "Why? Don't we need the water from the faucet?" So only later on of course, it's just a very small second, a short second, that I realized that when you say magbobomba na ako, it's a nudity language. Okay, so enough of my stories. So here in the decision tree, you will see 3 options instead of 2. And to ignore the instruction was a wrong decision. And the first option, to use the water for the pump, is not even satisfactory. So that's the reason why I created a third initiative of sipping a little water just to give me energy to do some water pumping. And I am happier and satisfied with this newly created option, especially if the outcome is there is water from the pump, the first possibility, and I could refill the water container. If water did not come out of the pump, I would not be as guilty as when I devoured all water from the container, which is in the second option of ignoring the instruction. You see, for me, in the middle ground, just a sip to quench my thirst will give me energy to start pumping the water. So now let's go to, we've mentioned tip number 2, create a middle ground. Really don't stay in an extreme option situation, okay? So tip number 2 to make the right decision is to include yourself and your well-being in your decision criteria. The decision criteria are really the areas for consideration. In our case, it's whoever wrote the instructions, we want to follow him or her. We are only the guest in the hut. So we also consider the next stranger who will come along. And in the third newly created option, I included my own satisfaction of my thirst, first of all. I sipped a little water, which is the middle ground between taking all the water and not drinking anything at all, using all the water for the water pump. So in that case, I cared for myself first. Because having come from days in the desert and I am dying of thirst, I have zero energy to work on the water pump, but I am not so selfish to just drink it all. Just a sip of water will satisfy me. So I have seen many wrong decisions when the decision maker puts herself least in the priority, or she does not include herself. Like, for example, a well-meaning career woman would work herself to death to feed her family, losing sleep, not eating the right kind of food, not eating on time. I have many examples like this in my work-life balance videos. I created a playlist in this channel on work-life balance. I encourage you to listen to those. And to these people who are so selfless that they would really die as martyrs for work-life conflicts, I would normally say it in Tagalog because for me, it sounded better, but I would say it here. I would tell them, our national hero, Jose Rizal, is depicted in a monument in Luneta Park, and you will see that that monument has little space for other martyrs like you. Okay? So my main idea in saying that to the people in the audience is for them not to make themselves martyrs unnecessarily. So not to die young when you put your health and your life in danger with unhealthy lifestyle or work style and a lot of overtime and stress at work. So really, tip number 2 of including your well-being in your decision equation is really thinking of your own survival. Like for an employee, for example, who has allowed herself to be like a punching bag of her colleagues, bullying words and actions, I said to her, the options are not limited to either resigning or not resigning from your company. First, she might find other bullies in her future company or companies, and she will not learn to deal with the bullies now. Then, in that case, she won't be prepared to deal with the bullies that she will meet in the future. So I advise her immediately think first how to protect yourself from the current bullying. And if her option is to resign, I advised her think also if so it's like this is my advice to her to think also if she loves her work, which is not the same as the people she works with who bullies her. The question to consider about job satisfaction is, will she ever find another job that she will like? Again, let's separate the work from the other realities like the office mates bullying her. Also, I told her to consider her professional relationship with her supervisor, who is not one of the bullies. Will she easily find someone like that supervisor in the future? And lastly, I suggested to her to think of her current customers. If she resigns, what is the possibility that the customers she loves and she serves will not be reassigned to the office mates who are bullies? So, my conclusion here is this. My conclusion in this case that can help us think of the right decision is the person who wants to resign is giving up many good things that could actually be helping her to survive the workplace, even with the presence of the bullies. But then again, she has to think of middle ground options, other options, rather than giving up the good things by just the option of I will resign or I will not resign. So at the minimum, as regards number 2 of including your survival or your well-being in the design equation is this. The right decision is really that which does not make you a worse person or put yourself in a worse situation after the decision at the minimum. So let's see, for the man in the desert, option 1 is putting himself at risk 50% of the time. If he entered the hut with 2% energy left, what would happen to him if he pours all the water into the pump and start pumping? He would die in the process of pumping. Perhaps it won't work, not because of the pump, but he did not have the sufficient energy with the pump, no? Pull up and pull down the pump. So the option number 2 of ignoring the instruction will actually make him less thirsty, but will also make him selfish, not thinking of the next stranger that will come along. So for the employee who is being bullied, the option to resign is to escape without any guarantee that similar ones won't appear in the next companies, and she would not be prepared to deal with the next set of bullies that will come along her life. So deciding for this is giving in to cowardice or to despair that the bullies will never change or they will never be scolded, reprimanded, punished in such a way that they will multiply their race. Do you agree with that? Have I talked too fast? Tell me in the comments. So really the option not to resign without protecting herself or thinking of her survival is really like entering the lion's den every day you go to work. Like saying, bring it on, you tell the lions or the bullies. You could turn into someone really who likes being hurt. And that is not a normal desire in life, right? Or you could find a middle ground solution that will satisfy your other criteria of continuing the good relationship with your supervisor or your customers if this is your case. So really think hard. Think hard of the other options that will not make you worse after the decision, or perhaps if possible, think hard of that solution that could even make you a better person. So tip number 3 in making a right decision has somewhat been covered in what I have mentioned about the next stranger to come along in that hut, also in search of water. So the decision maker must think of other persons who will be affected by the future actions ensuing from the decision. The question that you might think is, will the next stranger be grateful that you really thought long and hard to be able to provide him with water? It does not really matter. What matters is that the decision maker took the effort to think of that next stranger. The right decision does not depend on the outcomes on other persons. It really depends on how the decision maker learns to include the outcomes for the other people in his or her decision making process. So the goal is not to be a worse person after the decision is made and all the action plans implemented. The goal is really not to be liked or to be thanked for after you have done a good deed. So therefore, this is really already the conclusion here. Each decision is an opportunity to have a wider vision of reality. And the reality is our actions affect other people. And also, each decision presents the freedom to choose to be a better person. Each decision holds a space for you to become a better version of yourself. All right? So, if you like what you heard today, please click the like button. Consider subscribing to my channel and clicking the notification bell so you will know my next episodes or my next live stream. And you can ask questions in real time. So, thanks so much to everyone. Have a good night. Have a good day. Bye bye.